Without getting into the details of exactly how that happened or how she got it out, let's just say it was a bad situation. And she panicked because, like for many of us, her phone is one of the most used and essential tools in her life. But, on the other hand, she had no idea how to fix it, because it's a completely mysterious black box. So, think about it, what would you do? What do you really understand about how your phone works? What are you willing to test or fix? For most people, the answer is nothing. In fact, one survey found that almost 80% of smartphone users in this country have never even replaced their phone batteries, and 25% didn't even know this was possible. There are some 250 million cars in America, 250 million cars in the country with just over 300 million people. And most of those vehicles, of course, are gas-powered. This poses a huge challenge given the limited supplies of oil and the growing urgency of the global warming crisis. But there is good news, according to our guests today. And that is we have the know-how and the technology to build sleek, fast automobiles that don't use gasoline. These vehicles of tomorrow are powered by hydrogen, electricity, biofuels, and digital technology. And they already exist, so what's stopping us from putting them on the roads? Our guests today will help answer that. You've heard about SARS, AIDS, and bird flu. Now researchers from Australia claim we're about to be hit by a new epidemic, motivational deficiency disorder. According to the British Medical Journal, 1 in 5 people are said to suffer from motivational deficiency disorder, or MODD, and most don't even know they have it. Symptoms include being unable to get out of bed in the morning, being trapped on the couch. We live in an aging world. While this has been recognized for some time in developed countries, it is only recently that this phenomenon has been fully acknowledged. Global communication is shrinking the world, and global aging is maturing it. The increasing presence of older persons in the world is making people of all ages more aware that we live in a diverse and multi-generational society. It is no longer possible to ignore aging, regardless of whether one views it positively or negatively. Demographers note that if current trends in aging continue as predicted, a demographic revolution, wherein the proportions of the young and the old will undergo a historic crossover, will be felt in just 3 generations. Squeeze the life out of their prey. But how does a boa know it's snuffed out a rat? The snake listens for a heartbeat. When it stops, that's the cue to let go. According to a study in the journal Biology Letters, researchers outfitted rat cadavers with artificial beating hearts. They used dead rats to control for other signs of passing, like muscle spasms. Then they warmed up the rats, set the hearts pumping, and dangled them in front of hungry boas. The snakes attacked, and as long as that rat heart kept thumping, the boas kept tightening their coils and applying bursts of pressure, sometimes for more than 20 minutes. But as soon as scientists killed the heartbeat, the boas loosened up. Even captive-born boas who'd never hunted live prey paid attention to the pulse, suggesting the behavior is innate. And for good reason. The authors say constriction takes a lot of energy. And it can be dangerous, say, if an enemy strikes while the snake's coiled around its quarry. But by following the telltale heart, boas can keep the pressure on just long enough. Before a relaxing meal. 7813. This portrait of change in the world's population parallels the magnitude of the Industrial Revolution, traditionally considered the most significant social and economic breakthrough in the history of humankind since the Neolithic period. It marked the beginning of a sustained movement towards modern economic growth in much the same way that globalization is today marking an unprecedented and sustained movement toward a global culture. The demographic revolution, it is envisaged, will be at least as powerful. While the future effects are not known, a likely scenario is one where both the challenges as well as the opportunities will emerge from a vessel into which exploration and research, dialogue and debate are poured. Challenges arise as social and economic structures try to adjust to the simultaneous phenomenon of diminishing young cohorts with rising older ones, and opportunities present themselves in the sheer number of older individuals and the vast resources societies stand to gain from their contribution. The Brundtland Report, Our Common Future, 1987, defines sustainable development as development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Implicit in this definition is the idea that the old pattern of development could not be sustained. Is this true? Development in the past was driven by growth and innovation. It led to new technologies and huge improvements in living standards. To assume that we know what the circumstances or needs of future generations will be is mistaken and inevitably leads to the debilitating sense that we are living on borrowed time. Only if we assume that society will remain static can we understand the needs of the future. The way we live today could not have been predicted 20 years ago. These captives were later paraded through the streets of Barcelona and Seville when Columbus returned to Spain. From his very first contact with native people, Columbus had their domination in mind. For example, on October 14, 1492, Columbus wrote in his journal, "With 50 men they can all be subjugated and made to do what is required of them." These were not mere words. After his second voyage, Columbus sent back a consignment of natives to be sold as slaves. Yet in an April, 1493, letter to Luis de Santangel, a patron who helped fund the first voyage, Columbus made clear that the people he encountered had done nothing to deserve ill treatment. By living in close contact with humans, dogs have developed specific skills that enable them to interact and communicate effectively with people. Recent studies have shown that the canine brain can pick up on emotional cues contained in a person's voice, body odor and posture, and read their faces. In this study, the authors observed what happened when they presented photographs of the same two adults' faces, a man and a woman, to 26 feeding dogs. The images were placed strategically to the sides of the animal's line of sight, and the photos showed a human face expressing one of the 6 basic human emotions: anger, fear, happiness, sadness, surprise, disgust, or being neutral. The dogs showed greater response and cardiac activity when shown photographs that expressed arousing emotional states such as anger, fear, and happiness. They also took longer to resume feeding after seeing these images. The dog's increased heart rate indicated that in these cases they experienced higher levels of stress. In addition, dogs turned their heads to the left when they saw human faces expressing anger, fear, or happiness. The reverse happened when the faces looked surprised, possibly because dogs view it as a non-threatening, relaxed expression. These findings, therefore, support the existence of an asymmetrical emotional modulation of dogs' brains to process basic human emotions. Negotiation is a common process in business to mainly solve business conflicts between both parties. Compromise is a basic negotiation state in which both parties give up something that they want in order to get something else they want more. Compromise usually occurs in unfair parties when there is a fixed pie to be divided up, and whatever on one side gets, the other side loses. In compromise situations, neither side gets all of what they really want, but they each make concessions in order to reach an agreement that is acceptable to both. Both parties usually can reach win-win concept through compromise. However, negotiation cannot resolve all the conflict if one party is unwilling to resolve the problem. A leader can define or clarify goals by issuing a memo or an executive order, an edict or a fatwa or a tweet, by passing a law, barking a command, or presenting an interesting idea in a meeting of colleagues. Leaders can mobilize people's energies in ways that range from subtle, quiet persuasion to the coercive threat or the use of deadly force. Sometimes a charismatic leader such as Martin Luther King Jr. can define goals and mobilize energies through rhetoric and the power of example. We can think of leadership as a spectrum, in terms of both visibility and the power the leader wields. On one end of the spectrum, we have the most visible, authoritative leaders like the President of the United States or the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, or a dictator such as Hitler or Gaddafi. At the opposite end of the spectrum is casual, low-key leadership found in countless situations every day around the world, leadership that can make a significant difference to the individuals whose lives are touched by it. Over the centuries, the first kind, the out-in-front, authoritative leadership, has generally been exhibited by men. Some men in positions of great authority, including Nelson Mandela, have chosen a strategy of leading from behind. More often, however, top leaders have been quite visible in their exercise of power. Women, as well as some men, have provided casual, low-key leadership behind the scenes. But this pattern has been changing, as more women have taken up opportunities for visible, authoritative leadership. If you are inspired to take concrete action for global peace and development, take a look at the United Nations Volunteers (UNV) program. Every year, up to 8,000 qualified and experienced women and men of some 160 different nationalities volunteer at least 6 months of their lives to help others. These UN volunteers work in some 130 countries promoting peace, responding to disasters, empowering communities and helping to build sustainable livelihoods and lasting development. UN volunteers come from dozens of professional backgrounds, but all of them are catalysts of positive change. They are encouraged to be creative and entrepreneurial, and foster volunteerism for peace and development both within and beyond their assignments. They work at the heart of communities in partnership with governments, United Nations entities, and civil society. Being a UN volunteer is not a career. You are currently limited to 4 years of service, but it is rich with opportunities and experience and offers huge personal rewards. As a UN volunteer, you receive a Volunteer Living Allowance, VLA, which covers basic needs, housing, and utilities. Additionally, UNV will provide a settling-in grant, life, health, and permanent disability insurance, return airfares, and a nominal resettlement allowance. Negotiation is a common process in business to mainly solve business conflicts between both parties. Compromise is a basic negotiation state in which both parties give up something that they want in order to get something else they want more. Compromise usually occurs in unfair parties when there is a fixed pie to be divided up, and whatever on one side gets, the other side loses. In compromise situations, neither side gets all of what they really want, but they each make concessions in order to reach an agreement that is acceptable to both. Both parties usually can reach win-win concept through compromise. Tim Berners-Lee believes the internet can foster human understanding and even world peace. He is the man who has changed the world more than anyone else in the past 100 years. Sir Tim Berners-Lee may be a mild-mannered academic who lives modestly in Boston, but as the inventor of the World Wide Web, he is also a revolutionary. Along with Galileo, William Caxton, and Sir Isaac Newton, he is a scientist who has altered the way people think as well as the way they live since the web went global 20 years ago. The way we shop, listen to music and communicate has been transformed. The computer scientist from Oxford, who built his own computer from a television screen and spare parts after he was banned from one of the university computers, is a cultural guru as much as a technological one. It is amazing how far we've come, he says. But you're always wondering what's the next crazy idea, and working to make sure the web stays one web and that the internet stays open. There isn't much time to sit back and reflect. We speak for more than an hour about everything from Facebook to fatwas, Wikipedia to Google. With the population growth, the demand for resources has been growing as well. There is an expected increase in demand for various alternative resources, raw materials, timber for paper using, energy, materials. The increase of demand also happens in the non-renewable resource field, such as metal. The demand for petrol, diesel and crude oil is also huge to cope with the demand for manufacturing plastics. People should ensure natural world can still work well to earn the future well-being because the world population rises. Brand loyalty exists when consumers repeat purchase your brand rather than swapping and switching between brands. It is widely agreed that it is far more expensive to have to find a new customer than to keep existing ones happy, so brand loyalty is crucial for achieving high profit margins. For charities, it is important to set a marketing objective of improving brand loyalty. If existing donors can be persuaded to set up a direct debit to the charity, its cash flow will improve significantly.